This weekend, we celebrated First Communion for our children and their families. And in my homily on Saturday morning, I shared with them some memories from my own First Communion. And what I remember most was the family celebration after the Mass. My mom allowed me to select the menu. So I chose spaghetti and chocolate cake, my two favorite foods when I was 7 years old. I also remember that it was a true family celebration with lots of laughter and fun. One key lesson I took away from that special day was how meals have the power to bring people together in ways that other things don't. It was a lesson that was reinforced over and over when I was growing up. My family sat down to dinner every night. Now, my parents were by no means experts on child rearing. They simply brought us up the way that they were raised. Family mealtime wasn't optional. You didn't come to the table if you felt like it. There was no eating in your room or in front of the TV or while you were on your devices. And study after study shows that when families regularly come together for dinner, children are less likely to develop problems later in life. Why is this true? Because when families regularly gather around the dinner table, conversation takes place. Children might talk about their day, share what's going on in their lives, the ups and downs at school or with friends. Problems might get hashed out with advice given and solutions found. Families deepen their bonds of love and renew their purpose. I'm hoping you've found this to be true in your own life, not just with family meals, but also when you've broken bread with friends or neighbors, with colleagues or parishioners. It's a lesson as old as time, and one that we heard about in today's gospel. This is week 3 of our Easter message series titled, Do as He Did. After Jesus rose from the dead on Easter, he appeared to his disciples several times. He empowered them to preach, to teach, and to invite others into his kingdom. We're called to do the same, to follow their example each and every day in Bowie and beyond. In today's gospel, Jesus showed us one way that we can do this with the people in our lives. Before I dive into today's gospel, let's think of all the meals that Jesus and his disciples would have shared together in the course of 3 years. All the dinners, lunches, and breakfasts. They would have eaten together thousands of times. Not fancy, not formal. We're not talking fine dining. Think of their final meal together before the crucifixion, the Last Supper. It was a sacred meal, offering spiritual nourishment, but also comfort, encouragement, and support. Which brings us to today's gospel. Now, the passage we heard took place after Jesus' resurrection. He had already appeared to his disciples twice in Jerusalem. This is the only time we're told that he appeared outside the city, at the Sea of Tiberias, also called the Sea of Galilee. This was a place with very important meaning for Jesus and the apostles. The Sea of Galilee is where 3 years earlier, Jesus met the individuals who would become his first followers. So by meeting them here, Jesus wanted them to remember that first encounter, the moment they responded to his invitation to follow him. Because now he needed them to recommit, to go and do as he did. And like that very first encounter, this one also involved a miraculous catch of fish. And it also included a meal. Jesus and his apostles had breakfast together. We also heard about a conversation that Jesus had with Peter. Remember that at the Last Supper, Jesus predicted that Peter would deny him 3 times. Peter said he'd never do such a thing, but he did in fact deny Jesus. But now Jesus isn't angry with Peter, doesn't hold a grudge, isn't seeking revenge. Instead, Jesus gave Peter the opportunity to redeem himself. So Peter's 3 denials are now replaced with 3 statements of love. Jesus asked Peter the question, "Do you love me?" And 3 times Peter answered, "Yes, I love you." Here's how the final part of their conversation went. Peter said, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep." This is a powerful story on so many levels. First, it's an Easter resurrection story. The details we heard about how Jesus appeared, the things he did and said on the seashore, make it absolutely clear, beyond any doubt, this is the risen Christ. Then there's that exchange between Peter and Jesus, which is a powerful lesson on God's mercy and forgiveness. God gives second chances. If Jesus could forgive Peter for abandoning him in his hour of need, there's nothing you and I could do that God won't forgive. And finally, I love that all this took place within a meal. The apostles were members of Jesus' family. They shared a spiritual bond which all disciples share in. So through this meal, he was teaching his followers to do as he did, to feed others, talk with others, and grow in love. And as I said earlier, in this message series, we are being told to do as they did with the people in our lives. Our world right now is going through some really challenging times. There's so much disagreement, hostility, and hatred. People seem to be divided over so many things: politics, lifestyle, race, and religion. We all exist within our own little bubbles, only relating to those we agree with, only engaging those who share our opinions and our beliefs. In this culture, how can we do as Jesus did? How can we feed others, listen to others, and love others? In today's gospel, Jesus shows us one important way that we can do this, which is by sharing a meal with others. If you read through the 4 Gospels, you see that Jesus didn't just eat with his followers. He didn't keep to his inner circle. He also dined with tax collectors, prostitutes, Gentiles, and those considered unclean. And his practice of doing this again and again was shocking. He was constantly criticized by the religious leaders of his day for dining with controversial individuals and groups. Why did he do it? Well, Jesus' practice of eating with others was a natural response of his call to love. Love the stranger and the outcast, those everyone else turned away from and judged as unworthy of God's love. For Jesus, it didn't matter if the person sitting at his dinner table was accepted by society or not. For Jesus, meals provided the opportunity to welcome others into God's community of love. He was providing a space where people could change and grow closer to God. Earlier this year, we preached a message series titled Practicing the Way. It was based on a book written by John Mark Comer. Here's a quote from him. "There's no better place to get to know someone than over a meal. No better place to dialogue and even disagree in love." So it's one great way to live out Jesus' gospel by doing as he did. So here's my challenge to you. This week, invite someone to have a meal with you. Any meal of your choosing, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Invite them over or go out to eat. Not to preach, just to spend time in their company. And over the meal, take time to listen to each other. Get to know them more deeply. No more of an agenda than that. And ideally, invite someone you do not regularly dine with. Maybe a family member you haven't connected with in a while, a friend you've lost touch with, a coworker, classmate, or neighbor you see all the time, but haven't really taken the time to speak with. Why not ask that parishioner you sit near each week, but don't really know? I guarantee that if you accept my challenge, God will show up at your meal and reveal his love in surprising ways, because you will be doing as Jesus did. Amen.